The informal meeting of the Commission for Social Development is called to order. Before getting started, I would like to kindly request you to mute your microphones during the meeting unless you take the floor. At the same time, please remember to unmute your microphone before speaking. I apologize in advance if we experience any technical difficulties during the course of the meeting. And I am grateful for the technical service of the Secretariat's help in resolving problems of a technical order. Participants may select the preferred language to hear the interpretation or choose the none option to hear the original language of the speaker. If you face audio or video issues during the meeting, you may send a private message to the host on the platform. Fine. Now, I would invite the Commission to turn to Agenda Item 3 and its sub-items entitled Priority Theme, Inclusive and Resilient Recovery from COVID-19 for Sustainable Livelihoods, Well-being and Dignity for All, Eradicating Poverty and Hunger in all its forms and dimensions to achieve the 2030 Agenda, and B, entitled Review of Relevant United Nations Plans and Programs of Action Pertaining to the Situation of Social Groups. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this has been an extremely interesting week where the debates have focused on how it is possible to reduce inequalities in our societies and how government policies can be enhanced for sustainable development in the social, economic, and environmental spheres. As many panelists have said, the pandemic speaks all languages and revealed more than human vulnerability. It revealed how acute inequality is throughout the world and how astray social protection goes. We have to remember who is worst off and who is best off as a result of the pandemic, so that everybody can make a contribution for more fair, inclusive and egalitarian societies. As the representative of ECLAC said, Mr. Mario Simile, the pandemic has exacerbated structural problems in a development model that needs to be reviewed. And as a clear example of existing multilateral symmetry, he referred to the challenges in vaccine access, and the problems again, looking at the state of affairs in developed and developing countries. We have representatives of civil society, unions, cooperatives, and governments to help us to consider the way in which we can find solutions to eradicate hunger and poverty. It is the prime responsibility of governments to drive forward inclusive policies, but it's not possible for this goal to be achieved without the cooperation of other major actors, such as the private sector and civil society, inter alia. I would like to emphasize the fact that our speakers today are very close to those who are most vulnerable, those we call the invisible ones. And what they will tell us will be of vital importance for the UN and its members. I believe that the work we do here in the United Nations has to involve greater cooperation and has to take into account the difficulties of those in the field who are suffering. We are at an historic juncture where we have to return to a new normality, one that does not reproduce existing abnormalities prior to the pandemic. We are all entitled to live in a dignified fashion, to have a decent work, a healthy environment. And in order to achieve this, we require the commitment of every man and woman. I trust that your discussion will be a lively one with active participation from those here. I'm very pleased to welcome our distinguished panelists. Madam Sharon Barrow, General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, Ms. Esther Penunia, Secretary General of the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Development, Mr. Ariel Guarco, President of the International Cooperative Alliance, Ms. Elsa Marie de Silva, President of the Red Dot Foundation Global, and Mr. Juan Carr, social entrepreneur and the founder of Red Solidaria. I'm also pleased to welcome the moderator of this meeting, Ms. Rose Ngushi, Executive Director of the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis. Before hearing from our panelists, I'm very pleased to welcome our distinguished keynote speaker, Her Excellency Hanna Sarkkinen, Minister of Social Affairs and Health of Finland. Your Excellency, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Chair, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. Eradicating poverty and hunger are amongst the greatest challenges in achieving Agenda 2030 goals. Hunger and malnutrition in its all forms are major obstacles to development. We need to transform our food systems to ensure safe and nutritious food for all without negative impact on nature. Multi-stakeholder collaboration is at the core of the Sustainable Development Goals. Bold initiatives and innovations are needed to reach our common agenda. Finland highlights the importance of the whole of society in the implementation of the Agenda 2030. In the spirit of the economy of well-being, we encourage to increase cross-administrative and cross-sectoral cooperation. Lasting change cannot be achieved without partnerships. We are committed to increasing social inclusiveness and the capacity of an independent, vibrant, and pluralistic civil society to organize, advocate, and participate in political decision-making. Civil society has a significant role in leaving no one behind. It has the power to reach communities that would be difficult to reach through other channels. Dear friends, when it comes to transforming food systems, I want to highlight cross-sectoral and multi-level cooperation and dialogue. Together, we must find the will and the resources to tackle the malnutrition in its all forms. We need to address the many drivers behind hunger, including poverty, conflicts, climate change, and biodiversity loss. The UN Food Systems Summit has created a momentum for transforming food systems sustainable with the commitments by governments and stakeholders to achieving the 2030 agenda. A consensus among food chain actors helps in guiding the consumers towards better, healthier, and more sustainable diets. I would like to present two examples of multi-stakeholder collaboration in Finland. The first one is the Roundtable on Food, a forum offering an opportunity for open and constructive dialogue between the key actors in the food system, including the private sector. The Roundtable is tasked with the creation of a vision for a food system in 2030 that caters to the demands of a society where sustainability and security of supply chain are important elements. Secondly, the National Nutrition Council of Finland is a multi-stakeholder expert body that follows trends in nutrition and health of Finnish people and gives recommendations. The latest recommendations integrate sustainable development in the dietary guidelines. I would like to highlight the importance of healthy and free school meals, a long-standing tradition in Finland. The evidence demonstrates that school meals are one of the most impactful and efficient interventions to support children and to educate them on smart choices. Finland, in collaboration with partners, is committed to eliminating hunger across the globe. We have scaled up our support to help countries raise their school meal coverage back to the pre-pandemic levels and expand such programs. School meals are the most widespread social safety net in the world. Finland and France are working in close collaboration with member states from North and South, the World Food Programme and many other partners to build a global school meals coalition in order to ensure that every child receives a nutritious and healthy meal in school by 2030. Dear friends, the social and economic shock from the COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically increased unemployment and poverty, affecting lives and livelihoods of people around the world. Poverty and hunger are linked with other inequalities in our societies. We believe that safeguarding livelihood is a precondition for other support measures to be effective. While supporting access to employment, decent work, and fair working conditions, we must make sure that we simultaneously invest in strengthening social protection and access to services and education for all. Finland pursues a human rights-based development policy and applies systematic gender mainstreaming across all policies and implementation of the Agenda 2030. One great example is the Generation Equality Forum and campaign, which aims to accelerate the fulfillment of the rights of women and girls by removing systemic barriers to gender equality. This includes work-life balance as well as a strong sexual and reproductive services and rights. To reach our common agenda, we need to ensure the rights of women and girls, in particular of those who are in vulnerable positions and situations. The Finnish government's action plan for gender equality relies on intersectionality. We believe that individual status in society is influenced simultaneously by multiple factors, not just gender, but also socioeconomic background, place of residence, origin, family background, educational attainment, age, degree of disability, sexual orientation, gender identity and gender expression, and so forth. Tackling poverty and hunger and achieving food security are not possible without social justice and gender equality. In conclusion, I would like to highlight the risk of an intergenerational cycle of poverty, hunger, and deprivation. We must invest in children and youth in order to create a basis for well-being throughout the life cycle, from childhood to old age. As we are building back better and greener, the commitment to leaving no one behind needs to remain as the core principle in just transition, climate justice, and the achievement of Agenda 2030. An inclusive and resilient recovery requires strong partnerships. So let us work together to deliver on our promises and to fulfill our human responsibilities. Working together creates trust, equality, and stability, which are necessary for a successful transformation. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias a la ministra de Asuntos
Thank you very
Sociales.
much. A very warm word of thank you to the Minister of Social Affairs and Health of Finland. Before I give the floor to Mrs. Ngugi to moderate the panel discussion, I wish to remind panelists, please, to stick to their allocated time limit of 7 minutes per presentation. And delegations, please keep within the 3-minute limit during the interactive discussion. Ms. Ngugi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Ambassador. I want to take us through now the panel discussions. And today we have 5 panelists who will be making presentations during this session. And now I want to invite the first panelist, Nisara Baru, who is the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation. She is a woman of many firsts, including the first president of ITUC and also the first woman president of ICTU. Please make your presentation and please observe the 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Greetings to everybody. The human cost of COVID-19, this pandemic, is simply staggering. We all know that, and it will be felt for a generation or more. The crisis has disrupted efforts to achieve many of the SDGs, starting from the aim to end poverty and hunger. Increased poverty and hunger are directly linked to the massive loss of jobs and incomes that COVID-19 have caused, but also have built on the pre-existing crisis of historic levels of inequality, unjust and uneven development, and of course, the climate emergency. For women, the loss of income just through the pandemic has been some $800 billion. And women are the majority of those who've left the workforce permanently. Informality stands at 60% of the global labour force, dominated by women and young people, and is growing in every country. And gender-based violence has increased, particularly as people feel despair and the loss of hope. The world needs a new social contract based on the Sustainable Development Goals. These are vital to build a human-centered recovery. SDG 8 is a key to social and economic security with its target on jobs, workers' protection, decent work, social protection, inclusive growth and environmental preservation. SDG 8 provides strong leverage for other goals. Employment levels, wages and universal social protection coverage are central in the fight against hunger, poverty and inequality. So the policies we need include a return to full employment, a guarantee of inclusion, which gives us a common security floor. We need to create 575 million new jobs by 2030 to realise Goal 8. We need to invest in climate-friendly jobs with just transition plans. Jobs in infrastructure, transport, in the care economy, in health, education, childcare, aged care, community care services, jobs that give women jobs, but also give women the care support they need to participate in the broader economy. We need jobs in the transition of heavy industry, energy, and industry policies that sustain communities. We can't see people left behind, or the lack of trust and insecurity will simply grow. If we look at the jobs in these combinations of industries, they can generate up to 300 million jobs if we get the investment, the R&D, the skilling and the lifelong learning policies in place. Likewise, job creation in sustainable agriculture, vital to our own protection and the fight against hunger, will strengthen agri-food systems and mitigate hunger. The FAO has emphasised that the transition to green and more sustainable farming practices can not only improve food supplies, but lead to the creation of a further 200 million jobs. We can do this if we can. A rights-based recovery is non-negotiable for workers around the world. Decent work can only be ensured if governments enforce human and labour rights and mandate corporate and investor accountability with due diligence. We need due diligence. We need the compliance measures legislated alongside of it that include the grievance procedures that will affect remedy. We cannot any longer stand back and see dehumanising exploitation at the centre of our world of work. So this means fulfilling the promise of the ILO Centenary Declaration with its labour protection floor, including rights, maximum working hours, living minimum wages, and health and safety at work. partnered with universal social protection. Governments must prioritise universal social protection systems in line with ILO standards. We need to work together towards a global social protection fund to assist the poorest of countries. This is a fundamental development tool. And to build sustainable systems really will realise real progress on SDG 1 and 2. We very much welcome the inclusion of the Global Social Protection Fund among the recommendations of the Secretary-General's report presented to this Commission. And we will work as a global labour movement assiduously with the UN to implement the UN Global Accelerator for Jobs and Social Protection that sets us on the path with equality and violence-free workplaces, sets us on the path to realise the heart of a new social contract. We know that financing is really important, and I can't take the time to detail it here, but the financing sources to turn these priorities into reality are available, but we need more multilateral cooperation to push back austerity. We agree with the recommendations of the Secretary-General's report, including combating tax avoidance and evasion, scaling up international tax cooperation and progressive tax reforms, fulfilling ODA commitments, reallocating special drawing rights, and boosting debt relief. But economic prosperity must also include wages. Why do we build wealth if we're not prepared to share it? Workers must be paid just wages through minimum living wages, evidence-based, and collective bargaining, and the gender pay gap must be eliminated. So in conclusion, global recovery will depend on our commitment to work together in solidarity to share that prosperity, to build just development models, to realise all of the SDGs, but Goal 8 at its heart. The fragmentation of our societies with massive inequality, climate devastation, the pandemic, and increasing conflicts underscores the importance of social dialogue, us working together, understanding each other, building inclusive and effective policy responses. I will say that we are proud of the fact that since the beginning of the pandemic, trade unions have worked together with many governments and employer organisations to cushion the effect on people's lives, jobs and income. But multilateral failures, including vaccine nationalism, and those countries which have not taken care of their people, these challenges need to be resolved, and we need all of you. So I thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation and also for keeping time. So I want to call upon our next speaker, Ms. Esther Penunia. She is the Secretary General of the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development and has spent more than 3 decades of her professional years in the field of rural development. So welcome, Esther.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would like to share my screen because I have a PowerPoint presentation. Yes. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, as the case may be in your location. I'm from the Philippines, so it's evening my time. We thank you, Andessa, for inviting us in this forum today. And we would like to share 3 key aspects with you. First, on the role of family farmers. AFA is an alliance of national family farmers organizations, currently with 22 member organizations in 16 countries, with 13 million individual members engaged in crops, livestock, forestry, fishery, aquaculture, herding, and pastoralism. Globally, family farmers account for 90% of all farms and produce 80% of the world's food. Small-scale family farmers comprise 84% of all family farmers, majority of them in Asia Pacific. Family farmers perform multidimensional roles in society, including being custodians of biodiversity and managers of rural landscapes. And as family farmers are engaged in the elements of the food system, from production to waste management, we are at the heart and center of any transformation towards sustainable food systems. However, the current food system, which is highly industrialized and dominated by big business and capitalists, is very much broken. Family farmers suffer from lack of rights over our natural resources, mainly lands, fisheries, forests, and seeds. Lack of access and control over technologies, finance, infrastructure, information, and market resources, as well as insignificant involvement in decision-making processes. This is a food system that results to poverty, hunger, and malnutrition, with 1 billion people living in extreme poverty, mostly small-scale food producers and family farmers. In 2020, COVID-19 pushed additional 97 million in extreme poverty and additional 320 million more hungry people. It is a system as well that results to biodiversity loss, ecosystem degradation, and where the youth is unattracted to agriculture. At this point, second, allow us to share some concrete initiatives on the ground, which are our basis for policy recommendations for sustainable food systems to achieve the SDG. First, these are the 3 strong women leaders of the Dumagat indigenous community, leaders of an all-women startup primary cooperative called Kagat, with 150 members in the Philippines. Its national FO partnered with a homeowners association to use its covered basketball court for a weekend farmers market. The 4 tons of produce they brought could not all be sold here, so the national FO made a Facebook post and did some phone calls, and in response, several church and NGO groups later bought 600 packs of assorted vegetables for their feeding program for the homeless. After 3 days, all their produce were sold out. Still in the Philippines, the umbrella organization of family farmers cooperatives in the Philippines, called AgriCoop PH, signed a purchase order worth $375,000 with the government social welfare department for a 3-day delivery for 25,000 family food packs consisting of 3,000 sacks of rice and other food items for the victims of Typhoon Odette last December. Third, in September 2020, AFA and IFAD entered a $2 million 18-month grant agreement called Assuring Resilience of Family Farmers Amidst COVID-19, or ARISE, which is an FO demand-driven revolving fund. It has benefited currently 15,171 farmers belonging to 185 farmers groups in 8 countries who are engaged with private buyers in commodity value chains such as organic fertilizers, vegetables, rice, spices, coffee, mushroom, native chicken, tomatoes, beans, coconut, abaca, and cashew. The Global Agriculture Food Security Program, or GAFSP, embarked on piloting the Missing Middle initiative to directly finance qualified producer organizations. One such project is being implemented in Bangladesh since 2018, involving one apex organization with 55 farmers group as members. And through this project, FOs were able to implement 14 value chain activities in crops, fisheries, livestock, and agroforestry, facilitate access to financing with public rural banks, as well as establish virtual call centers to address production and marketing needs during the pandemic. Now, we would like to share with you our recommendations for sustainable food systems to achieve the SDGs. First, support the implementation of the United Nations Decade of Family Farming, or UNDFF. The UNDFF serves as a framework for countries to develop rights-based policies and investments to support family farming from a holistic perspective. It leverages on family farmers' unique potential to promote transformative changes in food systems to fully achieve the SDGs. Its 7 pillars contribute to the achievement of all 17 SDG goals. In the Philippines, for example, a national action plan crafted through multi-stakeholder processes with farmers' organizations as lead partner identified priority policies and programs focusing on agrarian reform and rural development. Another key recommendation is to mainstream the shift and transition to more agroecological approaches, guided by the 13 principles of the high-level panel of experts of the Committee on World Food Security, which incorporates the 10 elements of agroecology of the UNFAO. With greater focus on enabling policies, incentives, research, and extension, agroecological approaches can deliver simultaneously in terms of higher incomes and decent work, more diverse and healthy diets, a healthier environment, an increased carbon sink, and more resilient and sustainable food systems in which producers and consumers are empowered and better connected to one another. Last recommendation, is the third recommendation, is direct financing to farmers' organizations and inclusion of FOs in governance and implementation structures of financing institutions. Here we can cite GAFSP and IFAD. In GAFSP, its steering committee involves 3 representatives from civil society, and decisions are usually done by consensus. It also provides direct financing to producer organizations. IFAD, on the other hand, has long partnered with FOs through grant agreements, connecting FOs with partner governments, and regularly conducting Farmers' Forum in conjunction with its governing council meetings. In line with direct financing, AFA is also proposing the establishment of a Farmers Empowerment and Resiliency Trust Fund and Farmers Investment Fund in partnership with UN institutions. And lastly, along this line of recommendation, in 2020, the CERES 2030 report titled Sustainable Solutions to End Hunger was launched. It said that around $14 to $19 billion a year, or $330 billion in this decade, should be spent towards implementing 10 recommendations, which is divided into 3 sets. The first set, Empower the Excluded, recommends first to enable participation of farmers' organizations, invest in vocational programs for rural youth that offer integrated training in multiple schools, and to scale up social protection programs. The second set is support for on-farm activities for climate resiliency, such as research and extension of climate-resilient food production and processing systems, as well as water management. The third set is support for the on-the-move activities, such as in storage and packing facilities. We hope that these recommendations find space and inclusion in the 60th final report of the CSD. Thank you for your attention. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Esther, for that presentation, reminding us about family farmers. At this juncture, I would like to invite the next presenter, and that is Ariel Guaco, who is the president of the International Cooperative Alliance. He's the president also of the Coopera, the Confederation of Cooperatives of Argentina, since 2011. Welcome.
Muchas gracias, Rose. Muy buenos días.
Thank you very much, Rose. I should like to wish my distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this distinguished panel, a very good day. It is a great honor for me to be able to share some ideas and experiences that our cooperative movement has been driving forward globally, to share these with you today. Firstly, I would like to tell you that our movement is made up of 3 million undertakings with more than 200 million associated people throughout the world. I think that this is the greatest global undertaking network with a shared identity. Our identity has been designed over nearly 2 centuries. We're based on values and principles which unite us together as men and women throughout the planet. We have this international cooperative alliance with 126 years of history behind us, representing all regions and sectors of the economy, with cooperatives being involved. This ACI is the first non-governmental body which received consultative status from the UN. And that is the role in which we are participating today. We are addressing an extremely complex problem, as well as being perhaps the saddest time in our history. We've lost more than 5.5 million people because of COVID-19. We are facing what we could term another pandemic, for which we have not yet found an effective antidote. Extreme poverty and hunger, which are the afflictions of millions of our brothers and sisters throughout the world. This has only worsened the impact of the health crisis that has been with us since 2019. Although many economies are perking up, have been over recent months, the UN's own statistics tell us that growth will be lesser in 2021. Growth will be lesser than that of 2021. And at the same time, extreme poverty will affect 64 million people more in 2019 than in 2019 over the next few months. And then again, looking at the ILO data, more than 130 million jobs have been lost. As we know, after this health crisis with its social and economic effects, which have been a blow that has affected everybody to a greater or lesser degree, we see the possibilities of fair recovery becoming ever further off, with nobody left behind. Therefore, I believe it is vital for all civil society organizations to look at proposals that can bring us together with supranational organizations and countries to turn around what is happening here. First of all, I wish to say that cooperatives have made major efforts to provide basic services and goods to households and communities in general. Starting with health cooperatives, they've been in the front line battling COVID. And then there are many cooperatives in agro-industrial production, public services, telecommunications, cooperatives amongst consumers, with associated work, housing. We've seen the resilience of the organization here, social economic organizations at times of crisis. If COVID-19 has exacerbated hunger and insecurity when it comes to food, cooperatives have been able to protect the production of food by small farmers and maintained the value chain alive through these economies of scale. At the same time, because they are at grassroots level, they've managed to shorten the distance between cooperatives, between producers and consumers, which reduces the risk of inflation of food prices. There have been food banks, seeds have been distributed, capacities, training has been developed to support vulnerable groups and market access for local producers. at the same time, our ability to contain social demand during the crisis shouldn't hide from our sight our main objective, to see a more democratic food system so that producers, consumers, workers, and the entire community are active participants in the change that the SDGs require. Working together with the FAO this year on the basis of the Memorandum of Understanding signed in 2018, and also considering our firm commitment to the 2030 agenda, we feel that we are in a position to be active in resolving this problem, and we are open to the various bodies that are working on this. For example, the UN Group for Solutions and Commitments when it comes to implementation that was established in the 2021 summit on food systems. It is important to indicate that as well as inclusive and resilient development, we have to have undertaking entrepreneurship organizations which have shown that they can be inclusive and resilient. And here we must emphasize the cooperatives and the social development report, which was made by the UNSG, where acknowledgement was given to the importance of undertaking this here as economic and social actors who play a key role in the global recovery strategy, urging and driving forward political actions and programs implemented by governments, as well as the implementation of legal frameworks allowing cooperatives to prosper. We know that many governments have adopted and applied recommendation 193 of the ILO on the promotion of cooperatives, but there's still a lack of legal normative frameworks at many levels, national and regional. Which means that cooperatives are somewhat hampered in achieving the SDGs. We are optimistic, though. The ACI is heeded more and more in global fora, and we believe that our cooperative movement can be a true protagonist at this time, which is so critical for mankind with all its social, economic, and environmental challenges. We believe that we cannot turn around poverty and hunger without a cooperative paradigm, which can mean decent work, gender equality, and care for our ecosystems inter alia. We invite all present in these days, so civil society organizations, academic ones, governments, the CSD, to work together to move forward from this great crisis so that we can together build back better and live, all of us, with dignity in this new world. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ariel, for that presentation, reminding us about the cooperative movement. At this juncture, I would like to invite the next speaker. And the next speaker is Ms. Elsa Maria De Silva. She's the president of the Red Dot Foundation Global and the founder of the Red Dot Foundation in India. And she has earned herself various fellowships in her career. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Rose, and thank you, Her Excellency, Madam Ambassador of Argentina and Chair of the Commission, Mari Carmen Squef, for giving me this opportunity to present my work. My name is Elsa Marie De Silva, founder of Red Dot Foundation based in India. We work on gender equality and justice. The last couple of years has been extremely difficult for most of us. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the inequality and shown us the glaring gaps in the system that promulgate this inequality. Whilst everyone experienced the pandemic differently, women and girls have been disproportionately affected by it. There has been increased violence, child marriage, human trafficking, lack of access to health products, loss of jobs, and loss of education, amongst others. More than 1 in 10, or an estimated 32 million, limited their food intake or ran out of food in the week they were surveyed during the height of the pandemic. And many were worried about food sufficiency in their households. This compounds pre-existing women's poor nutritional outcomes pre-pandemic. Due to the lack of access to contraceptives, it is estimated that there was 2.4 million unintended pregnancies through the first 6 months of the pandemic. And prior to the pandemic, women's participation in the workforce was at 26%. This has now been reduced to 16.1%. On the other hand, unpaid work has been increased, with women caring for children, the sick, and the elderly. Some of the recent projects we have undertaken have been on ending violence against women and girls. During the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, the distress calls to the National Commission for Women's Helpline doubled, and many women were trapped with violent family members in their homes. Domestic shelter homes and crisis centers were not operational, and there was an absence of quality resources for physical, emotional, and mental health. At our organization, we started listening circles, advocacy and information campaigns on rights, filed a petition in the Supreme Court of India to list domestic violence prevention resources as essential. Food distribution to families. Initially, during the pandemic, we worked with a coalition of nonprofits and individuals to distribute cooked food in various neighborhoods in Mumbai. However, the demand far outweighed the supply. Our coalition eventually partnered with the municipal corporation, corporates, restaurants, and grassroots organizations to identify the needy, cook nutritious food, and distribute it seamlessly with hundreds of volunteers. Later, we provided families with dry rations that would take care of their family needs for a month at a time. Now the coalition has invested in community kitchens, which are managed and run by women. Medical relief. During the various waves of the pandemic, the burden on the healthcare system was immense. Many people struggled to access information, medication, hospital beds, oxygen cylinders, and ambulances. Once again, we partnered with several coalitions in different parts of the country, compiled and collated information, fielded distress calls, counseled worried citizens, and connected them to the right resources. Medical kits, which included menstrual products, were made available to them, including oxygen concentrators. Currently, we are working with the municipal corporation to upskill thousands of community health workers with the latest good practices so that they can be an additional resource to the community and the medical fraternity. Rural women entrepreneurship. Many people lost their jobs and had to return to their hometowns in rural and semi-rural areas. Supply chains were broken, further stifling economic conditions. We started several programs for rural women to upskill them and create entrepreneurship opportunities for themselves at their own location and at their own time. One of these programs was an incubator for ideas in the tourism and hospitality industry, where we helped the women create experiential products and services. A key part of this program was customizing the curriculum in the local language, matching them with mentors who are established leaders, and providing them with market linkages so that they could tap into the travel market. Once again, coalitions came in useful. Networks of hotels, travel agents, self-help groups, which were aided by the local municipality and Zilla Panchayat. By focusing on community-based tourism, we believe that you can bring jobs and economic stimulation to a hyper-local region, which benefits the community. More women participate because they can do it from the comfort of their homes. Giving a woman access to her own financial independence is extremely empowering, and we have seen her confidence soar, her respect within her family and community increase, and in many cases, she wants to pay it forward and provide the same opportunity and access to other women and girls. Some learnings from our projects are, there is a digital divide that needs to be addressed. We can take advantage of technology for remote work, remote education, and remote networking. This will benefit women greatly as they are constantly juggling multiple care tasks and will provide them the flexibility in work that they desperately need. However, governments must invest in good digital infrastructure, provide them with digital devices, comprehensive education to use these services confidently, and safety protocols to foster a safe environment. There is an urgent need to invest in coalitions, which can reach a large number of people in the shortest possible time. A country like India is huge and populous, And these coalitions can spring into action to assist the government to reach the poorest of the poor and the most vulnerable in the most backward areas. These coalitions should comprise of public, private, and development sector organizations and should be nurtured in normal times so that they can be the backbone of relief operations. Women's entrepreneurship should be encouraged and invested in. Take the jobs to the women rather than expect them to come to the jobs, as we need to acknowledge their multiple responsibilities, including the unpaid care work. Extra effort must be made to build their confidence, handhold them on their journey, and provide mentoring, which is critical to their success. Male colleagues have long benefited from networking and support groups, and it is time to invest in these for women. A percentage of GDP should be set aside as acknowledgement for the unpaid care work done by women. The money should then be invested in women-centric programs and infrastructure that they can use for childcare, elder care, mental and reproductive health, and their own personal advancement in careers. Finally, we also need to invest in comprehensive programs and infrastructure to prevent and end gender-based violence. As we build back better, I would urge you to invest in women and put them at the center of development, as that is not only sustainable, but also the right thing to do. It will help build a more inclusive and equitable future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elsa, for that very provoking presentation. Looking at aspects of gender inequalities in the different spheres. So our fifth speaker today is Juan Ka. He is a social entrepreneur and founder of the Red Solidaria. Juan has been recognized and given awards for his work in his career. Welcome.
Muchas gracias. Voy a hablar en español, donde soy más fluido. Agradecerles este encuentro.
Thank you. I shall speak Spanish. I should like to thank you very much for this meeting. For me, I'm a member of a network of solidarity. It's not an institution, it's a cultural movement made up of men and women, citizens. And so it's very moving for me to hear you voice so much concern and work so very hard to try to be close to those who are most sorely in need of help and who are most excluded. I think all of us share a desire to be closest to those who lag furthest behind, those in extreme poverty, who are malnourished, women, those who have lost their jobs, who are cast aside because of their sexual preferences, those who have to live in the street. We're all endeavoring to help people from these universes. And I think as citizens of our countries and of the world, I believe what we have to do is try to ensure that the exit of the pandemic, from the pandemic, because we do indeed all trust that one day it will come to an end. Our ideal is that these people who are excluded, who are marginalized, who are abandoned, those who are so very poor, may be taken into account in the post-pandemic world. We are very worried, very concerned indeed, because we have many doubts. If we look back at history, if we look at what has happened in past centuries, always those who need most, who are most sorely affected by exclusion from society, will remain so. We want the post-pandemic world to focus particularly on these groups. one factor I would point to in this wonderful meeting with people coming together who are so concerned about others, one aspect I would suggest is that we have an unofficial agreement so that each of us within the UN framework can look at the way in which the world can press ahead and look at those who are hungry, who are ill, women, all of those, so that in the post-pandemic world, we don't forget these groups. And secondly, and I shall endeavor to be brief, because having heard from all of you, you have made many points that I wish to make, which I welcome. I would like to say that we have managed to have a real global network looking at science, health, and knowledge. How can we all of us come together to combat COVID-19? And we have seen how everybody, men, women, children, countries, international organizations, how we've all come together to have a global network. Now, how can we maintain this network, this structure, as it were, for cooperation to look at those who are poorest, to those who are left furthest behind? If we are indeed to arrive at the eradication of poverty and zero hunger in 2 or 3 generations, because these should be goals that we really can attain. And we have many people, I've had many people at my house in Buenos Aires, and there are not many meetings such as this in the world. There are not hundreds and thousands of meetings such as this to look at those who are most excluded. We need to see how we can think of the needs of all these people, how we can continue so to do. There must be a way in which countries, undertakings, cooperatives, all of those who have come together, family farmers, we need to bring together these connections over time. We must have a real global network that is a solid one, so that we can indeed take care of those who are left out to the greatest degree. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. Indeed, calling upon having a global network that brings all of us together. We have come to the end of all the presentations, all the panelists, and now it is time for us to move to the interactive session. And before we open up, I want to invite delegations wishing to make comments and pose questions to use the dedicated speaker request form accessible on the chat board of the Zoom platform. I also want to take the opportunity to remind of a 3 minutes or less time limit for the interventions, and I thank you for cooperation. At this juncture, I want to give the floor to distinguished guests, representatives from 1, Argentina, 2, Portugal, and 3, China, following that order in the first round. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, moderadora. Bueno, en primer lugar queremos agradecer a todos los
First of all, I should like to express my thanks to all speakers for your words. We would like to tell you about some of the measures that the Argentinian government took in order to mitigate the effects of the pandemic as it hit those who are most vulnerable. Several programs were implemented, family emergency aid for those working in the informal economy. Then we wanted to look at households, the essential work program to help those with basic needs and to strengthen the production sector, and also to cover the child allowance and food cards. We have two questions to put to the panelists. Can you give me specific examples of partnerships, joint work together with member states, which were successful in addressing hunger and poverty? Then I have another question. How is it possible to ensure that international solidarity can be reinterpreted in the light of the pandemic? And what can we look at when it comes to this new large international scenario? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Portugal, please. Portugal.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. At the outset, let me congratulate the panelists for their presentation and for sharing their perspective around this year's priority theme. The persistence of poverty and unemployment and its increase due to the COVID-19 pandemic require global and integrated solutions. At country level, we have implemented several measures to tackle this issue. The Portuguese National Plan to Eradicate Poverty represents a political and social consensus. Over the years, stakeholders have called for the creation of such a strategy, including through the Eradicating Poverty Commitments Toward the National Strategy Initiative. This strategy pays particular attention to the fight against poverty and social exclusion among children. I have one question to the panelists. According to your experiences, could you mention a few examples of social policies already implemented through multi-stakeholder cooperation that contributed to turning the fight against poverty into a national goal? I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative from Portugal. I want to invite the representative from China, please.
I thank you, Madam Moderator. I wish to thank all the panelists for their presentations. I wish to speak on community-wide participation in poverty reduction. As the largest developing country, China has always been striving towards eradicating poverty and hunger. We have mobilized community-wide efforts, put in place a 3-in-1 poverty relief system comprising project-based, sector-specific, and society-wide efforts, and have an all-encompassing poverty relief program covering industries, science and technology, education, culture, health, and consumption. In addition, at the cross-regional level, East-to-West partnerships were established, leveraging the human, material, and financial strengths of the eastern parts of the country to provide tailored support to the western regions that are less developed and under-resourced. This has made it possible to tap into the development potential of the Western regions, bringing the two parts of the country together in partnership and synergy for common development. Digital infrastructure is another means to reduce poverty through e-commerce. Currently, all villages with the right conditions have tarmac and cement roads. The reliability rate of power supply in underprivileged areas has reached 99%. The fiber optics and 4G penetration rate is over 98%, and 96% of towns and townships have joined the express mail service network. Digital infrastructure has enabled online shopping, bringing local produce from the mountains to the dinner tables of households across the country. Eradicating poverty and achieving prosperity is now a collective endeavor. Innovative means of poverty reduction are being explored to encourage broader public participation. On one hand, digital wallet is applied in fundraising projects via WeChat and other social networks. Charity fundraising projects were launched on Alipay and other mobile payment platforms, lowering the threshold for ordinary people to participate in poverty alleviation. On the other hand, we have drawn on internationally popular charity models such as the Ice Bucket Challenge to explore more innovative forms of poverty alleviation. Outdoor trekking is one example combining sports and charity donations. 24 Hours of Hunger is another to inspire public empathy and expand public participation. I have a question for the panelists. How can a long-term poverty eradication mechanism be put in place to stimulate the endogenous potential in poorer regions so that the underprivileged population can have more stable income in the long term? How can civil society play a greater role in this? I thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank the distinguished representative from China for the interventions and the question that has been posed. I want now to invite the representative of NGO, Congregation of Our Lady of Charity of Good Shepherd, to make an intervention. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the panelists for a very insightful elaboration of what is actually happening and the desire that we have to see more stakeholder involvement and integral engagement of all peoples for the good of the people. I am Winifred Doherty, a member of the Congregation of Our Lady of Charity of the Good Shepherd. And I am speaking to you this morning based on my organization's experience of forming partnerships with artisanal mining companies and other companies, global, benefiting from minerals resourced in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Large multinational companies are taking advantage of the emergence of the low carbon and profiting from cobalt mining. Extracting these resources has destroyed the local environment, exploiting workers and child labor in the process. Workers do not have rights to organize as they put their health and safety at risk. The threat of landslides and collapse of mines is ever present, with loss of limb and life. Poverty is entrenched. There is no provision for just wages, social protection, or health care. And our organization works to enable the local community to partner with international businesses to ensure some social protection services, most recently a mobile clinic and nutritional and school services for children, and the development of sustainable agriculture. And so my question, what steps can international companies take to implement ethical and rights-based approaches to honor people's dignity and implement their human rights? And how can such partnerships with the local community become normative, ensuring workers' rights to just wages, health and safety in the workplace, and that these are upheld and social protection provided for the community and for all? Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you very much for that intervention. I want to acknowledge the distinguished representative of the NGO congregation of Our Lady of Charity of Good Shepherds. I don't have any further interventions so far, and I think this is the time for us to move to the next session. And the next session is to give an opportunity to the panelists to respond to the various questions that have come. None of them was very specific to any panelist. So I will request all the panelists actually to give a response. The first question was focusing on ensuring international, how do we ensure international solidarity in the new international scenario? How do we interpret that in the current international scenario? The second question that was from the distinguished representative from Portugal focuses on the social policies. And the key question is, do we have good examples of social policies that are very inclusive of multi-stakeholders in addressing matters of hunger and poverty? The third question came from a distinguished representative from China, and the focus was on long-term poverty strategies that can be used to ensure that we can reduce poverty for the underrepresented, and also the role that the CSOs would play in such a strategy. And finally, is the question that has come from the representative of the NGO congregation of Our Lady of Charity of Good Shepherd. And the question that is coming up is what steps companies can take to work very closely with the communities to ensure that work ethics and rights of the community are protected. I want to now give the floor to the first panelist, Ms. Sharon Baru, to respond to the comments or questions posed.
Thank you very much. And there's a wealth of questions here. We could spend a lot of time. So let me be as quick as I can. Argentina asked, where can you see national and international solidarity? I've just picked out a few examples. There are many countries that actually worked with trade unions and employers to put in place jobs and wage guarantees through the pandemic. The danger now is we're seeing those being lifted. And of course, we're seeing a return to insecure work, even where employment is picking up. We had a massive call to action for those commitments in the textile sector because the supply chains collapsed, as you know, in many vulnerable areas, and governments responded to the call of employers and workers with the ILO as a partner. The Global Care Alliance, it's been under, of course, UN Women. This has been fantastic and is picking up a whole lot of fellow travellers who know we have to invest in a global, robust health system. In other words, healthcare for everybody, nationally with support where we need it, internationally, but also education, childcare and aged care. And we are working at the global level, but also with countries that have committed, and that number is growing, to make sure that they're committed to investing in care. We've worked for debt relief with the international community, business community, indeed, to get the kind of debt relief, the special drawing rights increase to support the IMF, to give fiscal space to countries. And we know that Argentina, can I say thank you, has done an enormous amount in itself. And you moved very quickly with the shift to remote work or telework to put the rules of the game under that work so that it wasn't precarious work. And we really appreciate that. The question on the national strategy to alleviate hunger, can I say that the one resilience factor we can deliver collectively, nationally and globally is a universal social protection floor. The UN supports it, the ILO has standards. We have a whole range of projects going on at national level through the ILO with support from international organisations, but we need to deliver a global protection fund. We've got countries who have no systems, more than indeed 60% of working people and their families have little or no social protection. So let's change that, because this doesn't support the alleviation of hunger. It builds basic models of development, and that's where we need to be. And I'll finally say that in terms of, the UN leadership, listening to workers, to all of the community sector, to business, we have got a commitment to jobs, a universal accelerator for jobs and social protection. They're the security and the resilience factors that will alleviate hunger, but build economies. And international business, I really like the last question, because there aren't enough. There are not enough, but there are courageous business leaders out there who I work with. I work with the group of leaders on the B team, on Business for Inclusive Growth, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, really worried about inequality, and a commission to do something about it. The Global Compact, the UN's Global Compact and its companies. Indeed, they know that business has to reform, that they have to do what you said. They have to guarantee minimum living wages, a rights-based approach to decent and safe work. So we need to build those businesses. But I see a division where those businesses who know they have to shift for both people and the planet with climate strategies are being attacked by other businesses and by business-induced government responses where lobbyists are out in force. People need to make it clear. And the cooperatives movement, can I say thank you? You are building the base. And in our informal economy work, then women in rural areas are building cooperatives across all manner of activities to actually secure that vital work and income. Finally, I wanted to say, if there's ever a test of international solidarity, and we haven't won this one, is that the International Chamber of Commerce and the ITUC were out very early demanding an end to vaccine nationalism, promoting rapid antigen testing that still is not available for workplaces, for community gatherings, for religious gatherings, in order to see that people could themselves make sure that responsibility for each other was in place. So there is good business initiatives, but I'm not going to tell you, because I deal with the dehumanizing exploitation of the worst forms of business every day, that we've turned the corner yet.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barrow. Before I get to the next I give the floor to the next panelist. I think there is one question that I need to bring out, which I had forgotten. It was asked by the distinguished representative from Argentina. And this was regard to giving good examples on partnerships from member states on how to fight poverty. So as you respond, please also give us a clear examples on partnerships that member states can take in the fight on poverty. I now want to give the floor to Ms. Esther Penunia. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the interesting questions. So I would start with combining the question from Argentina and Portugal about specific examples of cases of policies that have been effective in eradicating poverty. I would say one good case is in the Philippines, where the law on agrarian reform was enacted way back in 1986 or 1988, 2 years after the People's Power Revolution, where we ousted the dictator Marcos. No? During that time, before this law, landlessness was a very big problem in the Philippines, no? And about 70% of the farmers do not own the lands they till. They are tenants, they are sharecroppers, where they give 70% of their income to the landlord. But because of the push, the push of the civil society organizations, especially the farmers, after the People's Power Revolution, and then the government was open to the participation of the different civil society, a law was enacted. And when the law was enacted, the civil society became, and the farmers' organizations became very involved in the implementation, giving paralegal training to farmers, organizing the farmers to claim their rights under this new law. And there have been studies after 10 years of the implementation of the agrarian reform that those who were able to receive lands, they were able to increase twice or thrice their incomes and had a benefit in terms of self-esteem with regards to this. Okay. Next question is on international solidarity amongst family farmers. We are grateful that there are development partners who help us convene, who help us meet regularly, so that we could discuss our issues and come up to maybe consensus, or see the divergences and the convergences of our issues, and as well as our strategies to address these issues. We maximize the spaces presented by the different global instruments like the CFS. There's the civil society mechanism. In the UNFCCC, there is the constituency groups like the farmers constituency group. These are what we maximize in terms of international solidarity. But of course, this is not enough. We really hope that there will be more international solidarity. In our case, we want to have international solidarity on sustainable food systems, especially on pushing really agroecological approaches to replace the green revolution. On the question of China, one example we can give, although this is not yet tested to the great extent, is that if, for example, countries would formulate national action plans under the framework of the United Nations Decade of Family Farming. This will be a very great opportunity for multi-stakeholders, including family farmers, civil society, private sector, and government, to craft plans which identify priorities and programs to reduce hunger and poverty, especially in the rural areas, because in many developed countries, that really the most poor and the most hungry are those in the rural areas. So if we could really have governments and civil society, especially farmers organizations, come together to develop the national action plan for the family farmers in their countries, we think that this will be a very good strategy, a long-term strategy to eradicate hunger and poverty. And lastly, from a question from our colleague from the CSO, how can international companies can be pushed to be more rights-based? We have policy instruments already, global policy instruments like the responsible agro-investments, as well as the voluntary guidelines for the responsible tenure of lands, waters, and forests in the context of national food security. These are policy instruments already which we can use to ask and to demand international companies to really promote and respect the rights of the people in terms of their rights to lands, as well as their rights to be informed. The freedom, the FPIC of most governments adhere to free and prior informed consent by the people, by the local communities, by the indigenous peoples before any company can do something in their areas. We could use this, but of course, organizing the local communities, the indigenous peoples, the family farmers, so that they will fight for these rights and negotiate with the international companies. That will be very good. Policies plus support to organizing and federating the local communities will be a very good strategy. Thank you. Back to you, Rose.
Thanks very much, Esther. As I call the next panelist, let me repeat the question that was asked by Argentina, the distinguished representative from Argentina. This is on the international solidarity. The question was how the international solidarity can be reinterpreted in the light of the pandemic to have concrete measures in this new and challenging scenario. I think I just wanted to clarify on that. Now I want to call upon Ario Gargo to make his remarks. Thank you. I'm not sure I can hear him. Can you hear him? I can't.
I cannot also hear him.
Rose, I can see him in the platform. Let's see what our technician can do in the background. And if he doesn't come in 1 minute, let's hand over to the next speaker and see whether our technician can see what the problem is, because I can see he's still in the platform. Thank you.
Okay, we'll give an opportunity to the technician to sort Ario out. So I'll go to the next one and I'll come back to him. I'll go to Ms. Elsa Maria de Silva.
Thanks, Rose. So I have 3 examples. 2 are for poverty alleviation that has worked well in India. So one is the Manrega scheme, that is the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. which aims to enhance livelihood and security in rural areas by providing at least 100 days of wage employment in a financial year to every household whose adult members volunteer to do unskilled manual work. It provides the guarantee of paid employment in the rural regions of the country, and it promotes the social inclusion of the rural population of the country. It ensures better usage of the land and water resources, which also makes it environmentally friendly. And it has changed the lives of people in rural areas. So that is one scheme. The second one is the, the unique identification, that is the Aadhaar Card. And that, along with the digital payments, worked really well during the COVID pandemic, where the government was able to transfer money directly into the bank accounts of the most needy people. So those are two great schemes. And then during the COVID-19 pandemic, there's an initiative called PicoNet, which is a UNICEF Mumbai-led network. It comprises of volunteers, corporates, government bodies, and over 75 plus civil society organizations who came together to streamline the efforts and services offered amid the lockdown and unlock the frenzy, because, India announced the lockdown with very little notice. Some of these services and solutions included relief to the out of work, helpless migrant laborers, designs for zero-touch foot-operated hand-washing stations, sanitizer dispensers, standard operating procedures for using these medical devices and sanitary devices, etc. And they also have been putting together SOPs, for disaster relief and other related issues. So I think, to my point when I made my statement, coalitions are the need of the hour, and these coalitions must comprise of civil society, government, and private sector, and these must be nurtured so that they can be effective during disaster relief. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elsa. I want to give opportunity again to Ariel, because we couldn't hear him before. We want to try him again.
¿Pueden escucharme allí?
Yeah.
Perfecto, qué susto.
Yeah. Yes, fine. Oh, that was a fright. Well, I shall endeavor to roll up my answers to the questions that have been asked. Firstly, we fully believe that the challenges facing us are indeed global ones, but the answers to them are local. It's up to every community, every organization, every one of us to provide responses. So we believe then that the root of all the problems that we've all been referring to is in models of development that don't represent us. These models are ones of concentration. We prefer democratization of models. I'll just give you a couple of examples which have given us much food for thought. For us, it is vital that the economy be in the hands of the people. What does this mean? This means real democratization of the economic and financial system. We therefore have to establish organizations which can look to the savings of everybody, local savings, and use these locally. So we need cooperatives, financial institutions that are close to the people, that are local, that can provide loans and also house savings for local development projects. This does indeed appear to us to be core. And then another solution, again, this is linked to the value chain. We try to shorten this, but we also want to have ethical value chain so that those who produce, distribute, and who consume are fairly paid for the work they do. We don't want to have a family farm producing something which is then sold at 10 times the amount that the producer receives. This affects the producer and the consumer. So we feel then that we can't reach food sufficiency and solidarity. We have to have everybody working to decide so that there's an effect throughout the entire chain. In Argentina, we're trying with a cooperative buying center where, for example, we have a working cooperative which has 160 outlets in 6 provinces with family farm products. And then on a macro level, we have Maria del Carmen who knows about this. We're doing a very interesting experiment with public-private partnerships at ministerial level, because we have to have strategic partnerships with the state if we are to achieve anything. And we're working with ministries, with the foreign ministries, so that we can have cooperatives in many countries, so that we can have commercial transactions and also share knowledge, share experience, work on value chains that are ethical. Chains. Now, I don't know Juan personally, but I have a great admiration for him. We're separated in terms of where we work, but it's absolutely vital to work on a global network of solidarity. We've made a few steps forward here with our organizations of the solidarity for economic production and association. We're working on this, but with Juan, we have to say we need many more actors, many more participants. And we're very happy to have more people coming on board, more participants in this network that you are promoting. So I'd say again, the problems, the challenges are global, the answers are local. They depend on each and every one of us working in an organized fashion so that we can have a global impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ariel. I want to go to Juanca. I welcome you to give your comments.
Sí.
Can you hear me? I would like to thank the world of cooperatives, because we very much appreciate what Ariel does and says. Now, firstly, I would say on the first answer, we are giving real responses every day. With the cooperatives, we have family farmers, there's admirable work there. And then we heard about India. I very much admire what you're doing, and I also agree with being close to people. We need tenderness. We need to be close to those people who don't have a job, who are cold, women who are battered. We have to show this tenderness. This is what's missing in the world. Now, I would certainly emphasize the network concept. We have to have networks. We need a mixture, as it were, of technology and tenderness and care, so that at a local level, as was said, we can provide responses. And then on the other hand, there's a twofold dimension. We have to bridge gaps. We have to include governments, undertakings, cooperatives, obviously, civil society. There's a lot of work to be done here to develop. And there has to be a philosophical debate looking at the ethical and moral sides of this. It's very far-reaching. We have a possibility of availing of communication networks, and we can increasingly speak for those who are without a voice, for those who are deprived of communication, of traditional communication. We have to do this more and more. And let me just answer this first question. Yes, there are real solutions. We're all working on providing real concrete solutions. We are close to those who are suffering. We have to embrace people, to meet them. We've all got an opportunity of doing this. We have to have a network for this. We have wanted to have a global network for a long time. We have a global network of knowledge, of science, of something enabling us to predict things. We have these. Something brought these networks together, COVID. But yes, there is an extremely important network of knowledge that can be shared, distributed with others. We have to see in what way, using this network or something similar to it, we can think of women, those who are ill, those who are unemployed, those who are cold, children who are abandoned, those who are lagging behind. How can we have a network to help those who are living with us, but they are in a vulnerable situation? They are the ones lagging behind.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yuan, for the intervention. I think this brings to an end of our interactive session. And I want to thank all the panelists for your excellent interventions today. You'll all agree with me that the debate has really been very, very fruitful, very thought-provoking. Whether we are talking about issues of labor market, having decent jobs, gender issues, the social dialogue that we need to have, working together, having corporate movements to bring people together, supporting family farmers, focusing on gender inequality, and most of all is that the issues that we are discussing have a global picture, and therefore we need to build global networks so that we can all work together to address them. I want also to thank the participants who came in the interactive dialogue, the distinguished representatives from the various member countries and the NGOs. And at this juncture, I really want to give back the floor to Her Excellency, the Ambassador. Thank you.
Bueno, hemos llegado al final de este foro de múltiples partes interesadas sobre el tema prioritario y quiero dar las gracias.
This forum with very many interesting speakers. I should like to thank our moderator, Madam Noguchi, for having chaired our discussion in an excellent fashion. And I should also like to thank the distinguished panelists and delegations who actively participated in such an interesting exchange of views. I'd just like to add something else here. I think that the Secretariat is going to have a lot to do because some extremely interesting points have been made here. There are proposals, there are real examples in these proposals on the part of the panelists and the various representatives of member states who have been able in this discussion to exchange their views. And I believe that it is appropriate, indeed very necessary, proposals and examples be minuted in this session of the CSD. These proposals cannot remain a dead letter. They are real proposals that have come from the speakers, from member states. So I would ask the Secretariat to see particularly that all of these proposals be included in an annex, an attachment to this special session of the CSD under the aegis of ECOSOC. I should like to thank you all very much indeed, and the speaker kindly thanks the interpreters as well for a very difficult job when we are working with internet. It's great that we have internet to enable us to work together, but it does complicate the work of the interpreters and all of us. The 6 languages of the UN are very important indeed. I should like to thank you for being here, because I'd like to say to the panelists that today we are starting to discuss our common agenda. This is a document that states asked for, which was submitted by the SG, and today we are getting down to more specific work on that report. I think we've had a very good turnout in this meeting and an extremely interesting discussion. So once again, I'd like to voice my thanks to everybody for the proposals, for the discussion, for being here. We'll meet again at 3 p.m. to continue with the CSD. Thank you all very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen.